All right, welcome to your coordinator virtual coaching session, and we are happy that you're here today. We are recording this session, and after the session we will be posting it on our NC MTSS wiki, and how that you can share it with others would be through going to the technical assistance and coaching page, and then you can actually click on that virtual coaching link. Also, the reason that we're doing this is that this is to help you in supporting your district or charter MTSS team. And this session, it's scheduled for an hour, but normally they're not taking near that amount of time. We do want to give you time to ask any questions that you have, and you can do that through using the chat window. And the whole purpose of this, again, is to help you to feel prepared to facilitate your district or charter MTSS team meeting. Our session today, we're finding it helpful to frame this through thinking about what we're doing before the meeting, what we're doing during the meeting, and then what we're doing after the meeting. And our session today is to help you to prepare for your next MTSS team meeting, and that the window for that we've set up is January the 23rd through the 29th, and some of you may be a little bit different than that, and that's okay. And just a reminder again, we are recording this session and it will be posted on our wiki, and you are all muted, so also a reminder, we definitely welcome any questions or feedback during the session, and if you can do that using the chat window. All right, so we're going to go ahead and look at that first portion in terms of the meeting preparation, and we're going to be looking at that before section. So some things just for you to think about before you're actually meeting. So certainly it's going to be really important to make sure we're good with our meeting space. Hold on one second, we're getting some feedback. Is it me? Are you hearing feedback? I hear a bunch.
Beth, are you able, I think we had a couple more people join. Can you just go ahead and mute everyone besides yourself?
All right, we got it figured out. How is that? In terms of sound quality, do we fix it? Okay, so we're going to start again, and we're looking at the before part of the meeting. And so the first thing would be to make sure that you have a place confirmed and that your team knows where that you are. So we're thinking about whatever the location is, the time. Also, if you need some equipment, we would recommend that you have a common platform that you're looking at in terms of visual support. It seems when you're facilitating things that having that really helps people to stay focused on what you're talking about. So that may be something that is helpful. Also, in terms of communication with your team members, so it is recommended in the course that folks are bringing their reflection journal with them. And so kind of big picture, this meeting is really part one of kind of a two-part meeting. So we're going to talk a little bit through that. So this one is really going to be to help you to determine the task that your team is going to be working on between this meeting and your next meeting. In terms of preparation, you would want to ensure that your team members have looked at the universal screening information. And so one of the tools there that we're going to highlight, so Amy's going to click on that, and it's selection of a universal screener. So what you can see here, and using this tool, you're provided in the course content that helps you to kind of walk through this. So this is a tool that helps you to actually compare 3 different universal screening tools, and it's going to walk you through looking through a couple of lenses. So one of those is looking at the technical adequacy. The second one is looking at efficiency, And then the third one is looking at some of those implementation domains. So certainly it will help if people have already gotten into the content around this selection of a universal screening tool. Also, some things that would be helpful around that would be knowing the purposes of assessment and what we call data evaluation planning. So just a quick reminder, data evaluation planning is helping us to look at kind of two big buckets of data: student outcome data and then implementation data, which is really around what our adults are doing. And then we'll have an opportunity to delve into some core walkthrough tools. And so one of the examples here that we're going to highlight is the explicit instruction walkthrough tool. So again, this would be, you have access to this in your Moodle content. And so you may choose to use this, but just to give you a little taste of what it looks like. So it's broken down in terms of 3 sections: I do it, we do it, and you do it. And you can see kind of in that middle column there, what are the look-fors in terms of what that you and your team may be looking for that the teacher is actually doing. And in that third column, you have a place that you can add different comments and noticings that you have. So before we look at the next part, the materials there, we're going to zoom down and we're going to go to the third page. And I meant to put that in the notes. I'm really quick going to type page 3 there. So just a quick review for you in terms of what that you and your team have already gotten into with the module content. So you've looked at the comprehensive data evaluation system. And again, the 2 buckets, how we're framing that is looking at student data and implementation data. You've also delved into the purposes and types of student assessment. One of the big resources that you'll see in that section is our MTSS assessment guidelines, which we got to look and really get into in our coordinator meeting this month. Also, you'll get into universal screening systems, which was a big part of our coordinator meeting. And then individually, folks have the opportunity to take a quick assessment quiz. Kind of the next bucket of work is around defining core and specifically our environment. And a part that we really start looking at is scheduling. And then the third bucket is looking at instructional frameworks. So we've broken that down by looking at design of instruction, scaffolding, feedback, and practice. And so some of that content you'll remember was a part of our Strengthening the Core coordinator standalone sessions that we did in December, I believe. So just to kind of quick reminder in terms of kind of what it is and the content that we've already gotten into and resources that you have associated with that content. All right, so we're going to go back up to the top here. And again, this is all just helping you to kind of prepare in your mind and thinking about what it is that you're really delving into for this meeting. So we also wanted to just highlight a couple of materials that you really may want to focus on. And if it helps for you to print these off ahead of time, that may be something that you want to do. Or you could actually, have the Moodle course pulled up and click on those links and help folks to be able to access it electronically. With this document that you have, each of those links are live. So the module 1, the district implementation milestones. So probably this is going to be familiar to you. And again, milestones are just like it's our map, and it helps us with thinking about these are the steps that we're going to actually take. And a little nugget from cohort 1 and 2, many people actually printed these off. They have them up by their desk and they check them off as they go. The nice thing too, just to highlight, is you'll notice you've got some links there for different resources that you can use to help you with accomplishing those different milestones. So the one we're looking at right now is really around the district team. We would still recommend that charter schools are using this because you're still really kind of designing what this is going to look like for your school team. And then the second link there is one that's specifically designed for schools. So you'll notice that like the first table, it's really what's the work that the district MTSS team is doing to help support the school team. And so again, that may be the district team, may be the work of what that you're doing if you're at a charter school, and then how that you're connecting with your school team. And so you can see kind of the item on the left side in the gray, and then the milestones are those different steps that help us to accomplish that particular item. All right. And something that many of you have been excited about is the learning checklist that we have. So this, again, you could be sharing this electronically. You could print off a copy and have folks actually maybe do a little reflection in terms of how are they doing with the content. A nice thing about this, you'll notice at that number 3 there, it says develop a data evaluation plan for implementation. It's really explicit about what it is, the content and your actions are around what you're doing in the course. So there you can see, like we've got the data evaluation planning video, you've got an implementation data example video, and then you've got 2 examples of the MTSS implementation tools table. So as a coordinator, this is something that can be a great resource for you to just kind of remember, well, yeah, I had that tool. It was really awesome. Now, where in the world was it? So this is something that can kind of help you to retrace your steps. But again, it may be something that you want to provide either paper copy, or if your team members are printing this off, ask them to bring it with them to your meeting. All right, so we definitely recommend, again, having a common visual space where people are looking. So it may be that you want to have the Moodle course actually pulled up, and then you'll have that as a resource that you can go to if you have different questions and you need to be able to navigate resources during your time together. And then a final thing to think about just before your meeting is you may want to have some people to step into some different roles. So if you're facilitating the meeting, then you may ask somebody else to be a note taker and to kind of capture some of the key discussion points and then action items. And you may also find it helpful to have somebody that's in a timekeeper role. So that way you're able to kind of keep those agenda items that you're going to tackle into a time frame that people will be able to really engage actively. So these are all the steps that are the different parts and pieces that you're thinking about before you actually come together with your district or charter MTSS team. So before we go to the next section, I want to ask Amy, do you have anything that you would add to thinking about the conversation or what we're doing before the meeting?
You did a great job. So the only thing I would add is, you know, when we have up here, look at having the team members look at the expectations so far from the content. I've heard coordinators say it's helpful to kind of email out like, this is what we should have been covering up to this point. So that's why on page 3, you'll see kind of the expectations in this section so far. So if I were the coordinator, I think I would probably go ahead and email out this list, like, just so you remember, these are the things that we've done so far, and that's kind of where what we'll be talking about at our meeting. So yeah, just being real explicit about that. But that's all I've got. Your wisdom is overflowing, Ms. Boggs. And we don't have any chat comments. Does anybody have any questions or comments at this point? Okay. Oh, I hear somebody.
I'll check and see if we're all muted.
Oh, there's a question. There's a comment, I think, or a question in the chat box. All good.
All good.
Thank you, Angela. Okay. Do you want me to go ahead and take the next section, Beth?
Good.
Okay. Please tell me if I missed anything. So then the next section of this document, like Beth said, that you'll get as well, just to kind of help you guide you through your meeting, is the during the meeting section. And so kind of the big picture of this meeting, we did, this is a change from cohort 1 and 2 that we added in there's actually 2 opportunities for a district team meeting during this section of content, during the 1.1 content, because it's a lot. It is a lot. So in order to process that with your team and plan implementation, it's a big ask to say to do all that in one meeting. So that's why we do recommend that's 2 meetings during this section of content. So for this first one, kind of the big picture of this meeting is that what we're going to be doing is looking to see, and your team gets to choose. So if anybody remembers the Choose Your Own Adventure books from your childhood that I used to love, this is the same idea. So you get to choose your own adventure as a district team. So when you're together with your district team, hopefully next week or maybe soon thereafter, the big task will be choosing your own adventure. And based on not just kind of what people are interested in, I would probably choose which thing you want to focus on based on kind of where your team is. So I've heard a lot of people saying, well, we need to have more conversations about universal screening, or we need to have some conversations about the assessment we're doing in general across our district for core instruction, or do we need to have conversations around what is the instructional framework that we have, or what are the instructional expectations we have across our district. So that's why you have 3 choices here of what your district team would do. And so the big purpose of this meeting is to look to see which one are we going to do, which choose your own adventure. We go off, we do that, and then we come back together in a few weeks for the next district team meeting, and we debrief on what we found, and hopefully that'll help you make some plans moving forward. So the 3 things that you have to choose from for this district team meeting, for the task that your team will undertake, is first off, the universal screening kind of conversation. So if you want to look at specific universal screening measures, universal screening tools, some of my districts that I've spoken to, they tend to have, they're still having the conversation maybe about what do we do universally for math? We have some literacy screeners, but have we really dug in to see what do we have to screen all students to determine risk and to determine our health of core in the area of math or behavior or literacy? So if you feel like that would be a good process for your team to go through, then that's where you would start exploring some of the tools that are out there. So within the module content to help you do this work, you would plan the process and review a couple of tools. So first off, you would go to this sources document that you see linked here, and this is also in the module content. And when we open that up, you'll see that there's a few different sources of screening tools charts that you can look to. The big one being the RTI for Success tools chart. They've already vetted a lot of the aspects that we want people to look at in a universal screening measure. So that one, there's also some information on our PBIS wiki about behavior screeners as well. And earlywarningsystems.org has some information as well. So you could go to those sites to look to see if we want to look at universal screening, additional universal screening measures. What would we look at this time? After you've kind of picked 1 or 2 or 3 that you want your team to go through to say, okay, how does it stack up? Beth had already opened this tool that we have within there, and we want to credit CMS, Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools, had started this universal screening tool selection a few years back, and they allowed us to adapt it. So if we open that tool, like Beth had talked about, this is a great way if you're sitting in front of a vendor to vet those universal screening tools, or if you're just going through one of those sites that's already vetted some for you, to really dive into, okay, these are the characteristics we would expect in a good screening tool, and how does this measure up? So that's kind of what your team would do if you chose that aspect of the Choose Your Own Adventure. Of course, you wouldn't do it probably at this meeting. What you would probably do is decide, okay, how are we going to conduct this? Who's going to gather the information together from our team? How are we going to sit down and go through this universal screening selection tool? The next Choose Your Own Adventure that you see there is really if you kind of before the piece of thinking that you may need a new universal screening or an additional piece of data universally. If you're at the place where you're thinking, with my district or my charter school, I really need to figure out what all the schools are doing across our district, what we're asking of them as far as assessment goes, and kind of conduct an inventory. So that's the point of the assessment inventory. We have the assessment inventories for literacy or math. And then we also have one, if we go down here, that is kind of generic, that you could apply to literacy, math, or behavior. And what you'll see here, and I've had districts in cohort 1 and 2 that have really had some rich conversations around this. You could do it for one area like literacy, math, or behavior, and maybe just one grade span. So we all hear the anecdotal information, especially about 3rd grade, that we have a lot of assessment going on in 3rd grade, right, across the state. So this gives you a way to have that conversation. Are there areas where we have lots of redundancy? Do we have too many literacy assessments? Do we have too many math assessments going on? Or are there areas where we have gaps? So instead of this being broken down in the traditional way of like saying what's our summative assessments, what's our formative assessments, the assessment inventory is broken down by the purposes of assessment within an MTSS framework. So you'll see the purposes across the top, and then you'll see the grade spans here. You may choose to just do this assessment inventory around those purposes that we addressed in this section. We address the purposes of assessment that you typically see within core instruction, which would be to inform instruction, determine who's at risk, and determine if we met outcomes. So a good way to start on this may be just to highlight those 3 purposes with your team and talk around 1 or 2 grade spans. We do recommend you kind of look at this choose your own adventure in this meeting, decide who's going to start collecting that information, and then debrief on it at your next meeting, because this is likely a task, both of these, that you would have to go and get some information. So what we've seen in some districts is they bring together a group of people that have lots of information about assessment across the grade span and across the area to start looking at this. So that is your second option on your choose your own adventure. And then the third option, so again, you just do one. You decide at this meeting which one you're going to do and how you're going to conduct that. The third one, if you have, so the other thing we covered in addition to data evaluation planning during this section of the module is getting you started a little bit of information about defining your core instructional framework, or what you're providing for all students. Defining what you have going on right now and what you might want to shore up, how you might want to define core instruction going forward in your district or charter. So if you're at the space where you really want to see, a lot of districts will start this process and say, you know, across all of our schools or across all of our grade levels, we have lots of different things going on. So if you're at the place where you as a district team want to get a better handle on what's happening currently across classrooms, this might be a nice way to do that. So we have a few different walkthrough tools that we shared during this section. One is what Beth had just shared around the explicit instruction walkthrough. Another really good one that we have within this section, and you'll see it during these resources down here, is one from Brunswick County. So the Brunswick County instructional team has a rubric that's a great way to start looking at what's going on across our district. But you may also have an instructional walkthrough that you want to go out into some classrooms and use, and that comes from your own district. So that's also just fine. So this kind of choose your own adventure is a good way to get several team members involved and say, okay, how are we going to go out, collect this data, and come back so we can see what's going on across our classrooms. So that's the third. So the next piece on here is the resources you have available to do that work. Beth had mentioned the to do any of these choose your own adventure. Beth had mentioned the assessment guidelines, and pages 3 through 6 in there really focus in on that universal assessment. So that's an area. We also have, if you choose to look at your universal screening, the universal screening recommended areas are in here as well, across the grade levels and across the areas. So that would be also a really good resource for you to take a look at. And then the others I think that we've talked about, but they're all just listed here in case you need them based on whichever choose your own adventure you start with. Beth, what did I leave out?
I thought you did a fantastic job. One thing, just what I remember from doing some of the classroom walkthroughs and doing that with a team of people is that the conversation that comes out of that experience is so powerful. And you may not be at a place yet that you're ready for that. You may be doing some of those earlier pieces maybe first. But I do, just to say, I think, we talk about MTSS is a lot about the common language work. And when you get into classrooms and you're starting to debrief on the things that you saw and talk about what you saw, what you didn't see, I do think having those opportunities to have that shared experience is so powerful. And what'll come out of that is kind of further common language work and further kind of defining what it is that we're looking for and when we see it and when we don't. And so I just think just that shared experience is really powerful.
Absolutely. I don't think we have any questions at this point. I'm going to go to just the kind of the wrap up around this. So when you decide, so as a district team at this meeting next week, you'll decide which of those three that you want to undertake, and then you'll start assigning out. So you want to think about who's going to do what. So if you choose to do the classroom walkthrough one, who is going to be going to different schools, who's going to contact the administrator, who's going to contact to make sure that we can complete these tasks. When will each team member get it done, and what will it look like when the task is completed? So what do we expect that whoever's going to go out to do these things, what do we expect them to bring back to the district team for the next meeting? And then you'll be posting the results of whatever your choose your own adventure is after your next meeting. So like I said in the beginning, we have 2 district team meetings scheduled during the 1.2 section of the course. And the next suggested meeting range is February 27th to March 5th. So that's when you'll come back together with the results of whatever your choose your own adventure is and post that as a group within the course. The last thing you probably want to cover within this meeting is what we had talked about in the beginning of how everyone's kind of progressing through the course as a team. So questions, leaving it up for the group about questions with the content so far. Does anyone need any assistance with the content so far? So I, as a coordinator, I would probably review kind of what each of these sections really entailed, and then how are we going to use that information? So, the whole purpose of the course is to give you guys and give your teams that general knowledge base that you need in order to move implementation forward. So there's a lot of really important big pieces in here, in particular the comprehensive data evaluation system piece that you probably need to have some good conversations around. The scheduling piece is definitely one our cohort 1 and 2 districts would come back several months later and say, oh, we weren't ready to talk about master scheduling yet, but now my schools want to. So that's something that is really an important piece in those first selecting schools to make sure that we're creating our master schedule in such a way that it enables implementation to take place. So that typically when we talk about defining core, the area of environment is probably the one that's in the most control from the district level before the areas of instruction and curriculum. So just as a kind of a little heads up there, that starting with that area of environment with pieces like scheduling, like acknowledgement systems, expectations around the building, environmental pieces like that, may be a nice place for a district team to start on this road towards defining what you want to see for all kids across your district. And then the last piece is kind of understanding for them kind of that preview piece like we do with students in the classroom, preview of what's coming up next in the content, which are really great, very concrete steps to defining core at a district level and the structures that you might be able to put in place. So just to kind of give you that big meta piece of this, we try to go through what does this mean to define core across these areas first. And then the next piece is in this content is what has this looked like in other school districts in North Carolina? And then we do, of course, still recommend at the end of your meeting, you get some feedback, and there's some resources there for that you can get feedback from your team so that we can make sure we're using our time and everyone on our team's time as in the best way possible.
Whew. That's it. That was a lot. Nice work, Miller.
She's so affirmative, that Beth Boggs. Y'all in the Southwest are very lucky.
So I do a cool little phrase around feedback that I really like is feedback that feeds forward. And so I think like with this, the whole reason you're getting feedback is so that you can think about, okay, well, what can we do that is going to be helpful for the next time that we're coming together? Or what can I be doing between now and the next time that we meet that's going to help you to support getting into the content and maybe even just having some time on your calendar. If you're dealing with like, okay, time, when am I going to get this done? And so a big part of kind of navigating that really, I think, just a common barrier that we all deal with, to the degree that we're able to start kind of chipping away at that and go ahead and put in some proactive things that we can do so that we don't continue to not be able to have or to not take that time getting into the content. And we do, that's something too, if it's, I know we had a little bit of conversation yesterday, Carmen and I, with the cohort 3 and 4 coordinators in the Southwest around how do I schedule for this and how do we help that to be effective. We can share some examples of different things that some of our cohort 1 and 2 folks have done that can help with kind of navigating that. Just what you have up there with the survey stuff is just 2 different examples. A lot of times in classrooms, we talk about having an exit ticket before students leave the classroom. So something as simple as that. And definitely, I think a big thing that our team would say is keep it simple. This does not have to be complicated. If you're wanting some type of like a survey or just a couple questions, this could even be at the bottom of your agenda and you just ask people. But there are the feedback survey. There's some potential questions. We've used this for many of you for coordinator meetings. So like, was this a good use of your time? Is what we're doing next, is it clear to all of us? And do you have any, just kind of leave it open-ended suggestions for our next meeting? You may get feedback on things that maybe aren't necessarily within your control, about the temperature of the room, or maybe the space, like you don't have a lot of options with that, or maybe food. So I think you just have to take those suggestions and think about what are the things that like I can control and do something with. So don't let it be discouraging to you. But definitely I think that can be something that is helpful, is that collecting some type of feedback that helps us to feed forward and prepare for our next meeting. So there will be a time and you will have finished your meeting and then you'll be thinking about, okay, so what do I do now? And I think this kind of ending what we're doing after the meeting is a really important part of our routine. So definitely, if you get the feedback, make sure you look at it, because we don't ever want to be taking feedback and then not looking at it. But it will take you just a little bit of time, depending upon how simple or complex you made that feedback collection. Also, it's, sometimes when you leave a room, like it may have been clear, but then a little bit later, I'm picking back up something I wrote on a sticky note, something that I need to do, and I'm picking it back up, and I'm like, what was it about? So it may be helpful for your team to just follow up by email after the meeting and just kind of have a summary, really quick, really short, sweet, and to the point, but this is the next step. Who's doing what by when? I think, so sometimes I talk about this a lot, but I do think it's really important. And when you're in this work, it's hard work. And you're really starting to peel away all these different layers of this kind of complicated and sometimes messy work. And sometimes the analogy we use is an onion. So it is important to be intentional about the celebrations. And so this could be a time in the follow-up email, any celebrations that you noticed, you could add that. And then also any changes that you're thinking about in terms of that next meeting based off of the feedback that you got. And then the third point there under the after the meeting is to make sure that you've got the next meeting scheduled, and that, again, we're communicating that with folks in terms of where we're going to be, when we're going to be there. And as you're continuing in the work, we do have the suggested agenda, which you're aware of, and, of course, all the resources in that folder that supports the work. So you'll continue to have that for that next meeting, but going ahead and making sure it's on people's calendar. Amy, is there anything else you'd add to that last part?
I don't think so. I think you did a great job.
So next steps for what'll happen after we stop recording is we will upload the recording. Again, it's going to go on the technical assistance and coaching page, and it'll go under the coordinator virtual coaching. That link is provided. So if you want to be able to look at this again, we'll also with that upload the document that you're looking at right now. So you'll have that also as a PDF. So, and now what we'd like to do is just to be able to open it up for any questions that folks have. And if you don't mind, maybe start those questions. You can just type it in the chat window, and then Amy and I and any other of our teammates that are on here will be happy to take those questions. And thank you for your time. We appreciate you and your work.
It could be that we were crystal clear. Or so confusing that no one knows exactly what to ask.
Yeah, no, people are really confused. And we also welcome, you could put in the chat window if this was something that was helpful in terms of today, or anything that you think kind of helped you in terms of thinking about your meeting. And thank you.
And you can just not put anything too if you don't want.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
Thanks, Luke.
Thank you, Angela.
Oh, great. Okay, that sounds good, Jill. Thanks, Justine.
All right. So if folks don't have questions, you can go ahead and start logging out, and Amy and I'll stay online for just a couple more minutes in case other people have questions. So thank you so much for your time, and hope your Friday afternoon goes well.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Terrell. Thank you, Jill. All right, Amy, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think I am.